Many racetracks earn themselves nicknames. Some describe their character, others refer to their surroundings. In the case of this famous track in upstate New York, it's often referred to as simply the Glen. That's right, our competitors take on the powder blue walls of Watkins Glen International and have to tackle its myriad of fast sweeping corners. The old school nature of this track certainly keeps fans and drivers returning, and likewise, we're glad to be back ourselves as we get ready to watch round 3 of the Precision Racing League's American iRacing Tuesday series. And you'll see it all live here on the Global SimRacing Channel. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth is Samuel Ryman. Behind the scenes is our director, Sean Ambrose, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. Sam, let's talk a little bit about this circuit and what it means for these GTE cars.
Well, it means there'll be some drafting out there, Joe, and also some carnage. There's lots of long straights around here for drivers to get a nice toe on their competitors, but there's also close walls ready to eat you up if you get it wrong. You see also in our graphic here that not only are we using the boot configuration of this circuit, we are using the modern day version of it. That means we have that inner loop there on the back straight to slow the cars down before they get to the carousel. 3.4 miles, that's about 5.5 kilometers a lap around here. 12 turns in total, and they will be racing for an hour here tonight. Qualifying currently underway, and the drivers are all on track together. So let's go back in time a little bit, show you our GSRC lap guide from earlier in the day.
All right, we've got Amjad Yammer in the GSRC Porsche 911 Cup, so let's do a lap around Watkins Glen. Coming down to turn 1, watch out that you don't come in too hot, because it'll be easy for the rear of the car to come around. You can use some of the paved runoff to carry your speed, but don't get greedy, because if you swing too far wide, you'll lose your momentum trying to return to the track. Now we head into the S's, and the powerful 911, it'll be nip and tuck through here. Watch how close Amjad gets to the barrier on the right. Trying to climb these while too wide will slow both parties down significantly. It's definitely better to use the draft on this backstretch to try and slingshot by your opponent. You also have the braking for the inner loop to help you overtake, but once again, entering side by side is risky and doesn't usually end well. That brings us to the carousel, where you're going to have to wait patiently to get on the power. This long arc is going to reward drivers who can judge the grip accurately and severely punish the greedy. Switch sides quick, because you'll want to line up your braking for the chute. There's very little room for mistakes through here, since the outside has a thin strip of grass and not much else before you slam into the tires. Try to late apex it and then bring the car over to the left for the exit. Now we're approaching the toe of the boot. Sneak attack passes sometimes happen into here, but your focus really needs to be getting a great launch up the steep climb coming out of the corner. Plenty of drivers underestimate the importance of this run, since the straight doesn't appear to be that long, but it offers one of the better chances to overtake on the circuit. As we hit the heel, remember not to clobber the inside curb too hard. It tends to unsettle the car even with a little clip. Now we return to the main course with this left-hander. In my opinion, this is the toughest corner on the track, with it being blind and off camber. Any small mistake can send you into the very close Armco on either side. After that is Indianapolis, which really requires you to get down into the groove, or else you'll lose gobs of time trying to keep it out of the dirt. Get the car to the other side of the track, and then comes the final corner. Treat this turn like a street course, because pushing it too far means the car just crumples into the tires. Hopefully, you respected the limits and can now cross the line to finish your lap around Watkins Glen.
There you see a lap in the Cup car of the 911. Obviously, they're going to be racing the RSR, the new version here at Watkins Glen in this series. Now, this race is brought to you by 3D Concepts and Creations, your ideas brought to life. You can find them on Facebook, and this series is also looking for more sponsors, by the way. You can check out PRL's website, which is linked in the video description, to find out more information on how you can become a sponsor. But a big thank you to 3D Concepts and Creations for not only bringing your ideas to life, but bringing this race to life as well. Now, as we've got quite a few drivers with laps, and we still have some stuff to cover before we really see how things are going to settle out there, because there's a few that do need to get at least one timed lap in. So let's take a look at the Drivers' Championship. Now, up at the top of that, after 2 weeks done, is Daniel Pinto, but he is tied now with Ben Perez. Pinto taking 2 second places. Interestingly, DuPont is down there in third. Now, you might be wondering why Eisler is all the way down in fourth. Well, He did not have a good race at Spa, and that has hurt him. He's going to have to try and recover and claw his way back up. Sebastian Massier rounds out the top 5. We also have a team's championship. Sam, what does that look like?
Well, much like a driver's championship, it's kind of close given the fact that we are currently only 2 rounds into the season, although you do see 11 markers currently separating our top 2 teams in the standings here. But as we mentioned, Joe, that these could, that's Team Bushfink Racing at the top with 2 American drivers being represented there, Perez and Barry. As we mentioned, 11 markers over SDS Racing Onyx. Sailors Racing Team sitting back there, 19 points, and then moving up 2 spots in the standings, that's UTRAS Motorsports Beef and SDS Ruby rounding out the top 5. But as we mentioned, Joe, it's very early on in the championship, and in the drivers' side of things and the team's side of things, things could get shaken up a lot. Who knows? The driver sitting midway down the order in qualifying right now could end up leading the championship by the end of this. Maybe it's even Gabriel Montañez in the number 5 car, though I think I'm only thinking that because his car's hypnotizing me, telling me that he's going to win.
Yeah, it's a little hard to look at in some shots there. Let's take a look at the race details, though, in case you've never seen one of these races here on in the Precision Racing League. Now, we are on round 3 out of 10, so not doing a full 12 weeks. And there you see the 3 GTE cars that they use, the Porsche, the Ferrari, and the Ford. Now, today's race, this is a little inaccurate. It is a 1-hour race that we've got, 60 minutes. And there is still 1 pit stop to be expected in that. Now, even though the setups are open in these cars, which means they can tweak them to their liking, everything that you can in the real world, like I said, 1 pit stop out here because they have restricted the fuel cells compared to what the real world ones run. Now, there is an incident cap. You get 30 incidents and you are out of the race. And the other critical thing about that, not just the incidents you have to worry about, but there is no fast repair in this series. As Bill likes to say, Sam, it is you break it, you bought it.
Yeah, and I'm always a fan of that because even when you do have series with fast repairs, I think it just makes a driver's race a bit recklessly early on in the stages. And, you know, I mean, as far as a longer endurance race would go, maybe that works out for you because that, you know, it gives you hours to try and recover and get back in it. But in this kind of sprint racing that we see in this series with these GT cars, it's to me it's a little bit unnecessary. I mean, the drivers we're going to be focusing on, battling up front, battling for the top positions, you can't really afford to get involved in an incident out there today because you know, you don't have a whole lot of time to recover from it with just 60 minutes of racing here. And also, this is not a track where you want to be involved in an incident anyway, just because of the high speeds and close walls around it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mentioned the old school nature of this track. It can be punishing. Now, there we see our pole sitter, Daniel Pinto, currently working his way around. He's got 2 second places as he has a mistake there coming out of 9, and unfortunately spins right in front of DuPont, who finished behind him last race. But the interesting thing here is Pinto finishing second. We mentioned Perez tied with him on the points. Perez took a win last race, and it looked like he was back on form, but Perez is back down again. He's only sitting 4th in the qualifying. Now he's got a little bit of time left, but not a whole lot, Sam. Is it just me, or is Perez a little hot and cold this season?
There could be a possibility. He was definitely a bit off the pace in practice compared to a couple of his competitors. But I'll make a note here, Joe. You mentioned Daniel Pinto currently being the pole sitter. That's provisional pole sitter, and that is very, very unofficial right now. We have the top 3 cars in qualifying sitting within 100th of a second.
Indeed. Christian Eisler, who did not have a good run at Spa, even though he took the win in the first round, sits in second. And then how about this new name that we're kind of unfamiliar with, Alexander Clank from the Virginias. He is, as you mentioned, about 100th behind Daniel Pinto, and he was at the top of the times in the warm-up session as well. So clearly very fast, and might throw a wrench in the system of this battle up at the top between our fast drivers.
Yeah, a couple of factors we don't always see here on iRacing throwing a couple of wrenches into the system just during qualifying. One is the fact that they're all sharing the track with each other. Well, actually, I'll say that's kind of responsible for two factors here. The first is that you have to time your laps right. You have to be able to get a clean lap and hope that traffic doesn't interfere with you on your hot lap. But the second is that you can use the other cars on track to gain an advantage on the longer straights around here. Get a bit of a draft, get a bit of a slipstream, and maybe even gain yourself a few tenths. Could see a couple of drivers out of order on the grid.
And getting some information, Thomas Ellison as well as Clink are two of the new drivers that are just starting this round. Now, speaking of the air, since you mentioned the slipstream, let's take a look at the weather. 79 degrees on the track is 69 degrees air temperature, and mostly cloudy as well. That's pretty ideal. Going to be very grippy out there, and not a whole lot of wind, maybe a little bit gusty. That looks like it's 6 miles an hour. But for the most part, I have to say, drivers, I wouldn't think would be complaining too much about what they've been given.
Cool track is always means quite a bit of grip, and I mean, one thing it does mean though, Joe, is cold tires early on during the run. I can't imagine with this being a 1 hour race and with this track being not too difficult on tires, I don't think we're going to see anyone take tires during this race. And
Ben Perez has just taken the pole, and by 2 tenths over Daniel Pinto. He has responded. Boy, the reports of his demise are very premature, it seems, because that was an impressive lap considering how tight things were between what is now second through fourth.
Yeah, he's only done it once, so even though he's got a 0.2 of a second lead on qualifying here, his best time in practice was a 1:40.9, so I wouldn't go handing him the race victory just yet. I think we're going to see the draft. We'll keep our top contenders very close on the first lap, Joe. And even then, there's always that big risk on the first lap around here. First off, you have one of the trickiest opening turns of any track on iRacing, because it's a very hard braking zone going downhill with lots of different lines into it for the first turn. And if that's not tricky enough, if you're able to survive turn 1 without any carnage, then you have that run up through the S's with those walls ready to bite. We even saw a bit of that in real world racing over in the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship last weekend.
And checkered flag is out, so drivers on a hot lap can complete it. But anybody who crosses the line is now done for the session, just waiting for the last few out there to try and see if they can change their position. We got about maybe 6 or 7 cars still out on track as we're watching Landini, currently the highest qualified of this group, I believe, out there still running, sitting in 8th. As what interests me too in this is Daniel Pinto actually just got bumped by Eisler recently, but still going to be starting 3rd. He mentioned himself, actually, and admitted himself that qualifying isn't his strongest suit, but 3rd is not too shabby, and that is going to mean something since he usually has great race pace. Wonder if he's going to be able to perform a little bit better. As here comes Landini around Indianapolis. One more corner, the almost street course-like final turn. Does he keep it off the barriers? Nice and tidy. Good head of steam. Can he improve on that 41.3? He crosses the line. And yes, he does. But he does not improve his position as he's less than a tenth behind Cameron Barry. So with that, I believe that's pretty much everybody on a hot lap. Hugo Galaz is still out there, but it looks like he is on a slow one. Let's go through our starting order. Ben Perez puts it onto the pole. Let's see if he can go 2 for 3 for wins here today. Christian Eisler is going to try and stop him and rebound from his bad finish at Spa, starts in second. Daniel Pinto, with a much better qualifying than we're used to seeing in previous attempts, he starts third. Newcomer Alexander Klenk will start in fourth. Sergio Maujo had a bit of an up and down race last race, but he'll start fifth today. Guillaume Dupont may have got the pole at Spa, but could not repeat the feat. In fact, is starting as far down in sixth. It's going to be a little harder for him to try and get a podium today. Cameron Barry will start in seventh, and Juan Manuel Landini starts in eighth. We followed his lap. Sebastian Masiera starts in ninth, and the top 10 is completed by Thomas Ellison.
Not too far behind him, though. In 11th place will be Aaron Thacker, lined up alongside Matthew Fraley. Pete Mobreton will be starting from the lucky 13th position alongside Michael Overbay. Evan Paust and Lucio Almonacid Vardres will be starting on row number 8 ahead of Justin Hall and Jean Kirindri. Andrew Fawcett and Cristobal Venezuela will be rounding out the top 20 here, and they're only about 1.7 seconds off of a pole time.
When we get to 21st, it is Mark Feil, and he is going to be flanked by Fernando Rodriguez there in 22nd. Row 12 has Moises Lobato in 23rd, and Danny Duchesne starting 24th. After them, it's Eric Luke, and he is followed by Karsten Quint in the 26th spot. James LeBlanc will start in 27th, with Tyler Gore in 28th. Hugo Galez will be our 29th starter, and row 15 is completed by Sean Kenny. And then we have just a few more. Gabriel Montaña starts 31st, Gary Schilling 32nd, and two drivers did not set a lap time, Federico Montini and Donald Arseth. So that is our 34-car field. Decent field out here. Long track, though, so it'll be a bit before they come upon lap traffic, at least we hope. And they're going to have a whole pace lap to work their way around as a rolling start in this series. Now, Sam, one thing that I'm interested to see is at Spa, we saw a lot of the Porsches doing spins on their own. They weren't touched. The drivers seemed to lose control. And this track, we noted last week, has very similar attributes with those long sweeping corners. Do you expect that we'll see a lot of the same, that maybe the Porsches will struggle with car control around here?
No, it's a possibility. I have a feeling at Spa you see a lot more drivers lose control on the grey stuff. Normally when you see a car spinning here at Watkins Glen, it's because they clip a little bit of the grass. I mean, we mentioned the walls are never too far away, but there's always some grass right between the grey stuff and the wall, and it's so easy to find it at certain points around here, particularly right ahead. I believe the turn's called the chute. When you're coming out of that left-hander, basically leading into the boot section, very easy to touch the wheels on there. The trickiest turn to bugger up if you're able to keep it on the paved stuff is turn 10. That's the right-hander that brings you back out of the boot section and onto what's known really as the Cup course, where the NASCAR Cup Series races. That left-hander, rather, is very tricky. No matter what car you're in, you could even be in a high downforce IndyCar or F1 car and screw that one up. Need to make a small correction here, Joe. Just a 32-car field. It looks like our two drivers that didn't turn a lap in qualifying, Federico Montini and Donald Arseth, are actually not in 7.
Sad to see us lose two. The more the merrier, I say, when it comes to racing, as we work our way up the back stretch. Now, this is a place that I have marked, at least in my script, as a bit of a danger zone here, Sam, as the pace car enters the inner loop. It's always a place to pass, but it always seems to me like a dangerous place to pass.
Yeah, and I mean that could be one of those turns where the drivers will get more aggressive as the race goes on. Maybe they'll play it careful in the early stages here. These drivers have had over 2.5 hours of practice time to get ready for this race. And the track conditions from practice to qualifying and from qualifying to race, they don't clean the track So that does mean that already, if you're off of a racing line, you are going to have to deal with some marbles.
Yeah, so drivers, and that'll just get worse as the race goes on, so drivers will have to be careful about where they elect to pass, try and keep an eye out for where the buildup is and where the grip is losing out. You can see now they're solidly into the boot, coming up to the heel of the boot. The front of the field been a little bit messy as far as the rows go. I'm kind of trying to figure out what exactly has been going on up between like our top 4 or 5, as they haven't been exactly racing side by side. I have to imagine that Eisler is going to try and pull it up next to Perez once the time comes, but for now he's been hanging back. And you're not allowed to try and get a jump start by just holding back like that, Sam. So I'm not sure what exactly he's doing here.
Yeah, he could just have different strategies for trying to warm his tires. You know, gas and brake. Sometimes that can warm the rims to get some extra temperature in your tires that way, rather than swerving left to right, which is what some drivers prefer.
All right, now they're starting to get a little bit better lined up as the roof pace car pulls out of the final corner, and it is going to be Ben Perez with control of the field. Green flag waves, and still Eisler was hanging way far back, but now that means that he's got Pinto up the inside as they head down to the 90 for the first time. Very difficult to get the braking right in this corner. Oh, we got a bit of an incident farther back. We'll come back to that in a bit. It looks like, I believe, I can figure out who was involved in that.
Justin Hall was off course in his Ford GT, but now they're running up the hill, drove very close for second place.
And that is allowing Perez to break away. Are we going to see 3 wide back there? That is Clank, who takes a little bit of a peek, but thinks better of it. It's going to have the inside, but it goes away from...
Oh, big crash in the middle of the field, hitting the braking zone. It is completely blocked back there.
Oh, wow, that is an absolute mess.
Evan Poust is upside down. Thomas Ellison is upside down. I don't know if this series does manual cautions, Joe, but they might want to consider one for this.
We'll come back to that in a second. That was one of the worst wrecks I think I've ever seen in any series that we cover. Just an absolute mess of cars. So, lap 1 is not yet done, and we might have quite a few DNFs from that. I know a number of drivers were definitely disadvantaged, having to slow up to a complete halt on the backstretch as we watch them work their way out of the boot back on the main stretch. Your top 5 after this first lap is over will be Perez, Eisler, Pinto, Clank. Excuse me, Perez, Pinto, Eisler, Clank, and Maujo.
And as they come around, you'll see some cars sitting in the pits who weren't as fortunate. Jean Carini is in there, Thomas Ellison as well. And Evan Poust, who has, I think, taken it to the garage.
Let's take a glance at that now that we've got a chance to see what exactly kicked that off. Did you catch it? Which driver ran into trouble first?
Yeah, I'll try and get a replay and get an answer for you here, Joe.
I think it might have been Ellison. Yeah, I think it was Ellison, the first one. Thomas Ellison. Looks like he had a little side-to-side contact as here we go, up on the backstretch. And that was with the driver of Matthew Fraley. And then from there, it was just a chain reaction. I'm not even going to attempt to try and untangle this mess and tell you exactly what's going on, because you could just see for yourself.
Yeah, it all started, Sebastian Massera was ahead of Matthew Fraley, and Matthew tried to pull right and go between Massera and Ellison, and when those 3 got together with the pack hot and heavy right behind them, it just didn't end well.
So we come back live. An update on your lead. Pinto in second is about 1 second behind Perez, trying to give chase, but really things start to heat up behind third place Christian Eisler. He has just got a train of cars in the form of Clank, Maujo, and DuPont trying to run him down and get past.
So these drivers were able to navigate their ways through that wreck okay and still have a decent pack going on throughout the middle of the field. Mentioning another one of the drivers who's not part of all this is Andrew Fawcett. I believe he also got heavy damage involved in that incident. So this pack is starting right around 13th place in the middle of the field, where we have Michael Overbay leading, Cristobal Venezuela, and Eric Luke has been one of the biggest beneficiaries on the opening stages here. He started 25th, he's up to 15th. Actually, I think we have about 3 or 4 cars through the field who've picked up about 10 spots early on.
Well, I can tell you how that happened, actually. We might want to go to the battle for 9th, because Pete Mabroten and Aaron Thacker very close as they come down to the chute. And excuse me, we're a little bit behind on our imagery. We'll get that sorted in a second here, but
and here we are catching up with this battle for 9th place. Yep, here we go as they come live across the crest of the field, down hill down into the hill of the boot. Pete Mabroten leading Aaron Thacker, and this is the turn I was mentioning earlier, Joe. Even if you keep on the grey stuff through that left hand, you're not safe.
Oh, I hate trying to put it around turn 9. It's so difficult. And boy, Thacker is just running in the tire tracks of Mabroten, not letting him get away, but still haven't seen a mistake from Pete and holding him at arm's length as we ride on board with Aaron for the moment.
All right, so especially with that opening lap pile-up, it's taken a couple of laps around here for the drivers to find their bearings. I'll tell you, I had doubts at the start of the race, Joe, whether Benjamin Perez would be able to break away from the cars second on back, considering the effect the draft has around here. But in the first 3 laps, he has built about a second lead over Daniel Pinto. Pinto with a pack of cars behind him and most of the middle of the field in the pack. But right now, things are looking good for the driver of that number 1 car, but still very early stages here at Watkins Glen.
And yeah, you can see those cars that you mentioned there, Eisler, Clank, and Maujo in that pack. We saw them earlier, but DuPont used to be on the back of that. That has changed. He is starting to drop off. He's a whole second behind Maujo, sitting in 6th and starting to fall into the clutches of Barry. As we take a look at Barry now currently, who's well clear of the car behind. That's Manuel Landini, so really no threat to him. He can focus forward, see if he can try and demote DuPont. Boy, I tell you what, Maujo looking a little bit out of sorts as he put a couple wheels off coming out of turn 9. He got away with it this time, but not often you can do that.
Yeah, things are being relatively calm when you look at the paper for the front for the front runners. Of the 8 drivers, the top 8 drivers on the grid, they're still running in positions 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The only exception is Pinto has got by Eisler.
Everybody perhaps playing it patient, or are they? Because Eisler's got a run on Pinto, and he's looking around the outside as Pinto stays defensive. Down into the inner loop, out breaks Eisler, and stays in 2nd for now. Wow, look at the run, though, that Clank got. Can't do anything with it. Has to hold back, and Maujo must have made a major error as he drops a number of tenths on this group.
Yeah, this isn't good, though, if they want to think about fighting Perez for the win later on, as these guys worry about each other. They've lost another second, really, to the race leader, currently 2 seconds back of the number 1 Porsche.
Yeah, if you're a newcomer to the American iRacing Tuesday Series, Perez, a 2-times champion, back-to-back, and he's looking to make it a hat trick of them. And the way that he's running this race right now, it looks like he might be able to get it. Oh, is that Eisler wide? You talked about the gray stuff through turn 9, and once again, we're seeing Maujo in the background. Excuse me, we didn't see Maujo because we were riding on board Clink, but he had another time putting his wheels into the dirt. these guys are not looking the most steady we've seen them in other races.
And that's not good, especially at this stage during the race, Joe, because as we mentioned at the top of the broadcast, I should imagine everyone intends to keep the same set of tyres on their car all race long, and the tyres should be up to temperature after 5 laps. Granted, you've still got a bit of a heavy fuel load, but your car should be handling good right now. So if you're struggling to get the power down, you're going to be in for a long hour.
I have a little bit battle farther back. 14th, challenging for 13th, Cristobal Valenzuela and Sebastian Maciera as they work their way up through the S's. This is where the draft starts to kick in. A nice slipstream as they scream down the backstretch up at the top of the hill. But it doesn't seem to be doing much for Maciera as he holds behind, and they weave their way through the bus stop.
Yeah, Maciera is one of very few cars running in the top 15 that has actually lost positions early on here. I believe he was involved a little bit in that lap 1 pile-up. He started 9th, he's back to 14th. He's going to try and think about recovering. Not able to do a whole lot right now. Meanwhile, I believe Moises Lobato has had an issue.
Yeah, looks like he went off in the inner loop. It was driver error. You don't have to go back to it, I don't think, because it doesn't look that interesting. Just basically slid into the gravel and returned to the track. Unfortunately, many laps or many positions down, as he is all the way back down to 27th now. Checking in on our battle for second place. Seems to be easing up a little bit, at least in terms of second place, because Pinto has a whole 8/10 over Eisler. But Eisler still being chased by Klink, and another time that Alex has a good run here. Let's see how aggressive he wants to be. That blue and yellow Porsche looks to the inside, but isn't quite close enough to try and dive it in.
And Pinto breaking away from those guys is actually kind of huge. He was only 1.6 seconds back of Perez last time at the line, and that gap had been over 2 seconds not too long ago. So Pinto breaking away from those guys, he can worry about trying to run the leader down rather than worrying about trying to hold on to second. Although, as I say that, looked like Perez was fast in the opening sector. Pinto's getting it back in the middle sector. That could be an indication that maybe Perez is running a bit less wind.
Interesting theory. We'll have to keep an eye on that. Meanwhile, down in 17th, LeBlanc leading Justin Hall. They're very close, and it sounds like that he's actually just made the pass, taking a glance to see where that took place. Oh, it was actually a big mistake from Hall. Out of the inner loop. I think he made contact with the wall even.
Yeah, this isn't the first time we've seen Hall struggle. You mentioned Joe seeing a, and if we catch a tail end of a replay here, we'll try and get Hall's moment here. But Justin Hall had also had a moment at the very start of a race in turn 1. Maybe that was a blessing in disguise for him though, Joe. He dropped back a lot of positions when that happened, but was able to avoid the pile up at the top of the hill. Here's a replay of what just happened.
Yeah, you can see the car just getting a little bit loose, maybe too much curb. Gets a tank slapper, just glances it off the wall as he bounds over the grass, but the damage is done. And he's taken it into the pits. It must have been significant damage.
Yeah, we're only about 12 minutes into this race. I think this is too early for a scheduled stop. Battle's on for third, Joe. Klenk is hounding Eisler. Or if he's not, he's close enough for Eisler to worry about him, because Eisler is racing defensively in his 727 machine.
Yeah, he has been laying it on thick, not giving Eisler any reprieve pretty much this whole race so far. But Eisler's been dealing with it despite a few times where he's been offline that we have witnessed. He hasn't given it up yet, or at least Klenk has not been able to pry it away. We could put it that way. And behind them, if they do start getting side by side, you can't count out Maujo, the 713, holding on, but just barely.
Yeah, pretty evenly matched between these two right now. Offense meeting defense and no one getting anywhere, like a 120-minute football game that comes down to penalty kicks.
No spoilers for people, Sam, in case they haven't watched it. Got a little bit of a close fight going on farther in the mid-pack, very similar to what we saw at the start with our leaders. We've got Sebastian Masiera ahead of, here we go, Cristobal Valenzuela, Fernando Rodriguez, and Eric Luke all in a line. Now Luke is starting to drop off a little bit, so I don't think he's holding them up too badly, but they're struggling to try and get by this Porsche. They work their way up through the S's one more time. Good exit, so critical out of that first corner. Valenzuela's looks decent, and he is starting to gain ground. In fact, he's gaining it a lot quicker now. He is coming on strong. I think he's going to run out of road, and they have to brake for the inner loop. Masiera lives to fight another day.
Yeah, I wouldn't be too surprised at this point, Joe, if Masiera does have a bit of damage on his number 20. Oh, I know. There, I think you can see it on the onboard. Yeah, you can see a little bit damage to the rear end on his car, because having qualified, I mean, these cars that were behind him, he was about a second faster than all of them in qualifying, so something is not sitting too well with the driver of that number 25 machine right now.
That's got to be frustrating, knowing that you could have so much better speed. I have to suspect that he's probably going to pit early so that he can try and get that repaired, or what would you think you would do, Sam?
Well, it's always a tough call. I mean, anytime you pit early, there's two risks you run. One, if you get involved in an incident on pit exit, you've got, you know, a longer amount of time to run before the end of a race, and you'll be even worse off in the second half. And the second is that when you pit early, you run the risk of coming out in traffic that you are faster than. Meanwhile, though, Joe, talking about the fast cars, things getting interesting for second again. Pinto have been able to break away from Eisler, but Eisler and Clank reeling him back in. But once again, that's through that first sector. I wouldn't be surprised if Pinto's able to break away from them in the middle part of a lap here, maybe the end part of a lap. I really do think he has an extra bit of downforce on that 969 machine.
Yeah, certainly hasn't been able to stretch away as they get awful close to the rear end, but don't get a good exit as Clank and Eisler fall back a little bit. Is Clank going to take a look? He peeks to the inside. I was going to say he was kind of far back for that to be a serious attempt, especially this early in the race. So Alexander stays P4. I wonder how long it's going to stay that way, though.
Meanwhile, James LeBlanc, who have been up to 17th, have just faded back to 19th. I think what happened is he had an off, lost the position to Gabriel Montañez, but also had a slowdown penalty, and he had to yield the position to Tyler Gore.
Yeah, not been the best of days for the 007, it seems, with him this far down the order. Actually, it sounds like we have the replay. Why don't we take a look exactly what happened to him? Maybe there are other factors involved. Give him the benefit of the doubt. Let's see, as we pulled up the replay here. Oh, and are we looking at LeBlanc here? I don't think we're looking at LeBlanc. LeBlanc's in an orange Porsche.
Yeah, seeing a bit of action going around the tail end of the lap there. Meanwhile, when we come back to live action here, Joe, things were looking quite interesting for third going down the back straight last time by. Clank was able to pull up alongside Eisler. He was never close enough really to try and attempt to move in the inner loop. But once again, showing you he's definitely not content with riding back and forth.
Indeed, so... Well, might see some good action happening here at the top of the field any moment soon. We've been kind of keeping an eye on it. It's been a bit of a slow burner between these four. So we'll keep an ear out in case that starts to erupt. Why don't we jump a little bit farther down the pack to see what's going on in some of those battles. In fact, 21st seems to be getting a little bit close between File and Kenning. About half a second between them. The 777 currently holds that 21st position. There you see him in the red Porsche. He's being chased by the blue and white car of Sean Kenning.
Is this the car over at Spa that was giving me all kind of headaches, Joe? Because I just saw a red GT car. I was assuming automatically it was a Ferrari.
I think that was someone else, actually. I think that wasn't File. But yes, we did mistake a Porsche for a Ferrari because of the red color. Getting ever closer. Kenning looking like he's got really good pace as he's chopped another 10th or so off of File. All he really needs here is a good launch of off the 90.
Easier said than done.
That sounds like racing in general. So much easier to be an armchair expert than to actually get out there and be fast. And look at Kenning. He did get a good launch, and he's got the slipstream. File does not cover off the inside. He stays on the racing line, and I think that was a big lift as he lets Kenning through. Oh, do we have a change?
Yes, yeah, Sebastian Masera has dropped back 4 positions this lap. I believe he had an off around the inner loop. We've seen that for a few drivers today.
It was in the chute, actually.
Oh, the chute, okay. We have seen some damage to the rear of his car, Joe. Once again, that could just be ill handling, an ill handling race car causing some issues for him there.
Let's see if we can find that replay. I think he made a little contact with the wall and actually had a very close moment as well with Fernando Rodriguez. So this is... looks like we're heading into the toe of the boot, so I think it was before that, or at least the heel of the boot. Probably about 30 more seconds behind. Looks like we're still having some issues with our replay. We'll get that sorted out in a bit. Back up at the front, let's take a glance at our leader. Oh, I think we, never mind, it looks like maybe we found it. Oh no, we're going back live now. Yeah. Okay, we're back live.
Yeah, Masera still struggling out there, but still going around, which is something a lot of cars unfortunately haven't been able to say since what happened on lap number 1. I'll tell you, Joe, I'm still keeping half an eye on the battle for third. I'd like to watch this one more time, because Clank, last lap around, he actually tried to pass on the outside of Eisler at the top of the hill. But once again, even though he's able to get a good run and pull up alongside Eisler, he hasn't tried out braking him into the inner loop yet. Yet I can only imagine as we approach the halfway point of a race that each lap he's going to be a bit more aggressive. Let's see what he does this time.
Oh, he's pretty close coming up the hill here. I think this is going to be a great opportunity. Now they get onto the back stretch. He's going to be well within the slipstream. He looks to the outside, but still just cannot catch up to him up there. Might have to think about the differences in downforce between those two cars as well, Sam, because I would have thought with how close Clank was that it would have been an easy, at least be able to be side by side by the time they hit the braking zone.
And of course, we still have pit stops coming up in the middle portion of a race, Joe, so this might be the last set of laps we get left before pit road opens.
And knowing that, we're going to take a real quick break. We'll come back for hopefully the first of our pit stops here and round 3 of the Precision Racing League's American iRacing Tuesday Series. Don't go away. And welcome back here to Watkins Glen, where we watch round 3 of the American iRacing Tuesday Series, brought to you by 3D Concepts and Creations. If you were watching the side-by-side there, it figures as soon as we step away, finally, Clink has a go at him. Sam, what instigated that? What made the difference that he finally decided to get aggressive?
Well, it's not the first time I've seen him get up alongside it, Joe. I think it is just a matter of it's a lap-by-lap basis on what kind of run Clank is able to get out of this corner right here. And this corner is so key. There's so many different lines. There's so few really references for you to use through that turn that you never know. Even the most experienced of drivers never knows if they're going to have a nice run going up a hill or a bad run. This time it looks like Clank has a nice run, but not as much as he did last time. A nice holds onto third.
Still incredibly close. Wow, and Eisler taking a lot of curb on the second apex. That upset the car a little bit. You can see how close that has allowed Alexander Clank to get. Sometimes you can make passes into the chute. I don't think Alex is going to be able to do it here, though, and he waits patiently behind Eisler, seeing if another opportunity is going to raise its head.
These drivers battling for third place of 32 cars that started, 25 still left on the lead lap. Justin Hall, Evan Paust, Andrew Fawcett, Moises Lobato, Matthew Crowley, Thomas Ellison, and John Carini all off of the lead lap, many of those due to incidents.
Indeed, I believe 2 of them have DNF'd. That's Lobato and Ellison so far. Otherwise, the ones that you listed are still running. So right on board with Clank, staying with this battle. This is really the best battle on track. Apologies to the midfield. We've been trying to give them some coverage, but these guys just will not let up. And Clank, despite his best efforts, just can't seem to do anything with Eisler. He's got to be thinking maybe pit stop strategy at this point with the trouble he's had trying to overtake.
Well, to the credit of midfield, I'm surprised we still have one after the opening lap. But yeah, no, this battle for third is really heating up, and Clank has a good run this time. So what's he going to do this time, By? It looks like it's going to be inside, but I think he's just going to back out of it. Yeah, he wasn't up alongside enough. Meanwhile, green flag stops. Well, it's always green here. Our round of scheduled pit stops starting. Our first one in was Vargas in the number 71 machine.
Always green, except for in the fall. But yes, we've got at least 4 cars in the pits now. Some of them already have hit their stalls. Just an update, we don't need to go back to it, but Sean Kenning had an off and went into the wall. I expect he's probably going to bring that in with how hard he hit it. Oh, speaking of which, we just had an incident with Overbay as well into turn 1. He nosed it in nicely. See if we can pull up the replay. This looks to be a single car incident. Just coming around that apex. Ooh. Saw the tail end of it there. Thankfully did not pull it back out on track before Andrew Fawcett came into him. Here we go. This is again Michael Overbay in the Ferrari. Very difficult to get the car woed up into this 90-degree corner with its downhill braking. And you can see that mid-engine machine found its momentum, just not staying the correct way around.
Several other leaders in the pits as we come back live here, including Pinto, Maohiao and DuPont, but a great battle continues between Isla and Clank. Isla on the outside again, very close. Sorry, Clank on the outside again, very close there. Isla didn't give him a whole lot of room.
Oof, that was very, very tight. I'm surprised with the bad result. Oh, and was there a knock in the back there from Clank into Eisler as he collects it back together out of the outer loop? I was about to say, with the bad result that Eisler saw last round, you would think he'd be more concerned about just bringing it home within the top 3 instead of fighting so hard there.
Pit road's getting very busy as we hit the halfway point of the race. Drivers trying to split the race into 2 halves. Let's see if our leaders follow suit and similar strategy. I can imagine Benjamin Perez, he might as well just keep it out, keep his car out on the track as long as it can possibly go. I don't think tires are concerned, and right now he doesn't have any traffic to deal with.
Let's see. No, he's going to elect to pit. He's trying to cover the others off, it looks like.
It could be that, Joe. I'm also a bit concerned as Isola's Clank coming behind that maybe this means they're right on the cusp of the fuel window.
Yeah, indeed. Cameron Barry, the last of them up at the top, needing to pit, comes in. Now, the first car who has pitted is Daniel Pinto. He wasn't anywhere close to being able to jump Perez, so we don't expect that to change hands. Although Perez still in his stall, still stationary.
Yeah, Pinto just coming around the final turn right now, but as Perez is rolling out of his stall, he should easily retain the lead.
Oh, it's going to be a little tight, actually. I think it's a lot closer than it was previously. Because wasn't he about 2 or 3 seconds ahead of Pinto?
Well, I'll tell you one battle that's really broke up. Clank in the pits for a long time. And I don't know if this is an experience he has with the league. Maybe he opted to take tyres, whereas no one else is. But boy, Clank is far, far back of where he was before.
Could have had a little bit of damage from that little bump we saw on that lap. We're hearing his lap.
16 seconds longer in the pit stall, Joe. That could be a speeding penalty.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. Oof, these cars do have pit limiters, but if you push it all the way to the line, you can obviously run afoul of the stewards there. Well, what this has done is meant that Clank is now down in 7th.
Yeah, but not too much of a benefit to Isla because he has lost a position through the cycle. He is now behind Sergio in the 713 machine.
Great performance by Maljo. He started this race in 5th, looking at 3rd now, potential podium, especially after last race where he finished in 5th, but that was considering that he had a spin or 2 in there and had to work his way back forward. So Maljo proving that when things don't go wrong, he can get some good results in.
Now, one car is hypnotizing me into talking about how they've been able to navigate their way through the field. Can you guess who that is, Joe?
Oh, you're going to have to tell me, actually.
Yeah, the number 5 car.
As as
Gabriel Montañez qualified 31st and has been hypnotizing other people in front of him through use of his nose to let him by.
Yeah, 31st to 13th is quite a run, and actually might make it 12th because Cristobal Valenzuela is right ahead of him and within striking distance. This is one of the few battles that we have left out on track. It wasn't just up at the top that the pit stops pulled cars apart. There is pretty much everybody else out on track a second or more away from each other now.
So, are we going to see the Hypno car make a move on the Cristobal Valenzuela? Well, he's a bit too far back right now. I am using this pun for the rest of this battle. Right now, things in favor of the 333 car.
Yeah, I think he's either going to have to get a lot closer, or maybe he's going to have to catch him sleeping. See, that was a hypnotized pun there, Sam.
Yeah, no, I saw
it. We ride on board with Cristobal looking back over the diffuser at Montañez. And again, this is a battle for 12th position that we're following right now. About halfway through this race, if you're just joining us, welcome to Watkins Glen. Go ahead.
Sorry, Gray, the battle for third is on. Iceland's going to try and make a move down into turn 1, and he's going to do it.
Iceman slips it up the inside with a textbook maneuver, but he might regret that because Maujo, now as close as he is behind, gets a healthy dose of the draft. Going through the S's, he's got to time it right, though. As they start to get wound up to speed, Maujo doesn't look to be gaining that much.
No, Iceland going defensive. Anyway, Drew, you were about to tell the audience who I was. I kind of like it when you do that.
I'm Joe Peak, and this is Samuel Ryman. If you're just joining us here on the Global SimRacing Channel, again, this is round 3 of the American iRacing Tuesday series out of 10 rounds in the season. And already we've seen some dramas and some shakeups in these first 3 rounds that have not necessarily made the championship a question mark, but raised our eyebrows and given the hot shoes something to think about. There we see Eisler continuing to hold off Maujo. You caught a glimpse of Pinto up there. He's about just under 3 seconds ahead of this fight, really in no man's land at this point. Oh, and there's a car off. That was Carson Quint. Let's see what happened to him, because he was smack dab in the middle of the track. Oh, he actually nearly got hit by Benjamin Perez. After we watch this replay, we might want to go on board our leader. Made a narrow escape and took an unusual way. I would have thought he'd go around. There you saw him. Yeah, whew, look, you couldn't see from that angle, but it was awful close.
Went to limped his car back around and got into the pits. Now, what that did do to Perez, of course, was cost him a little bit of his lead over Pinto. It was back down to 1.5 seconds.
Still, he's got a bit of a safety gap, which I think is exactly what Perez wants and why he's not letting up on his pace in this race so far, even though he hasn't been challenged. You can never tell what will go wrong in racing, and only the checkered flag decides the end results. Got that battle for 12th getting a little bit hot once again. Montañez starting to see what he can do with Cristobal.
Yeah, these cars going round and round this circuit, but no one quite knows what the future holds right now. But right now, it looks like Cristobal will stay on ahead in 12th position. Meanwhile, something I do foresee happening in the future, Joe, is a battle for 6th and then later a battle for 5th, because Alexander Klenk, now that all the stops have cycled through, dropped back to 7th place with the suspected speeding penalty we assume he had. He's been running Cameron Barry down the 2nd lap, and also Guillaume Dupont up there in 5th place. So it remains to be seen how much of a fight those drivers will put up, but Klenk is running them both down.
Curious if Guillaume was laughing after that pronunciation as we watch Alexander get ever closer, try to make up for his pit error. Cameron Barry now well within his sights. He's not going to get an opportunity into the 90, but look at him close under braking on that Ferrari. I think he's got him right where he wants him, which is within the slipstream on his way up the hill.
Yeah, it makes sense, Joe. None of these drivers have English-sounding names. All the English drivers are out partying right now. Here we go. He's got a nice run here down the inside and up into 6th place. I have a feeling Cameron Barry made that a bit easy for him.
I was just about to say he did make it look easy the way that he slid on by. Clank sitting in 6th now, and DuPont about 2.5 seconds up the road. So still doable here with 20 minutes left on the clock. DuPont probably a little more hopeless as he's got Maujo a whole 9 seconds ahead of him for 4th.
Approaching the 2/3 stage of this race, a 1-hour-long event, and we're approaching 40 minutes in. I'm still a little concerned, Joe, about how tight this fuel window is, considering pretty much the entire field pitted at the halfway point of this race.
Well, I got a bit of an update, unfortunately, for fans of Gabriel Montañez. He dropped back, and in fact, for a while was a 1.5 seconds behind Valenzuela. Right now, he's gathered it back to within a second, but he is certainly not within striking distance anymore of that 12th position. Got to be getting a little bit desperate at this point. Might even look for some help from the audience. Now that pit stops are over, let's run you through our top 10. Starting with our leader, going to Ben Perez. He put it on the pole. He was challenged a little bit at the start, but honestly, once he was able to get away from Pinto, he never looked back. He holds about a 2-second gap over Daniel, who he currently is tied with in the championship lead. That'll change, obviously, no matter where they finish after this is said and done. Christian Eisler, who was usually the rival to Perez last season, just hasn't seemed to have anything for him except for in the first round. That has since changed here the next 2 rounds. Sergio Maujo is still holding on to the back of the Iceman. He may have given up the podium, but he's not given up on the fight. Guillaume DuPont rounds out our top 5, as we mentioned earlier, a whole 9 seconds back and well behind our top 4. What's the back half of the top 10 look like, Sam?
Well, running in 6th place, but not intending to stay there for much longer, is 3:37 of Alexander Clank. He recently disposed of Cameron Barry for that position. Barry still running where he started as a result of all that in 7th. The same can be said for Juan Manuel Landini back there in 8th position. That's exactly where he started. And our first driver actually in the race who started outside the top 10 is the driver running in the Ford GT in 9th place. Actually the first and one of only 2 Fords in the field back there for Aaron Thacker. I'm sorry, 3 Fords. Yeah, that's right. We got Danny Duchenne and Justin Hall back further in the field as well. And then rounding out the top 10 is Lucio Vargas, and he is currently running 3 seconds ahead of Pete Mobreton, who would dispose of him for that last top 10 position if he can catch him.
Speaking of catching people, it is Porsche domination here today. The first car that isn't a 991 is Cameron Barry in a Ferrari. And as you mentioned, the next one down is a Ford. So at least we got all 3 makes within the top 10, but Ferrari's not really able to do much since they're the main part of the field besides the Porsche out there as far as makes. Ford, like you mentioned, only 3 of them here today. 17 minutes left here in round 3 of the American iRacing Tuesday series at Watkins Glen International.
Go ahead. It's getting dicey for 15th place. Joe, we've been watching Sebastian Massera just gradually drop his way back through the field with that rear end damage. Well, right now he has Eric Luke all over the back of him.
Luke not able to do anything with it that time, even though he was side by side into the inner loop. It is a race to forget for Sebastian. Down into the chute, takes a little bit of a peek, does that yellow and black Ferrari. We right on board with Luke for the moment. Coming down to the toe of the boot, holding right in his tire tracks, not letting up the pressure. Look at that wide entry. Oh, and just doesn't find the late apex, does Masiera, and that allows Luke to really get up underneath that rear wing. He ducks to the inside. Can he be late on the brakes? And the answer is no.
I think his best bet is going to be the wait until they get back out onto the back straight. Meanwhile, things getting dicey for 5th place too there alongside.
Ooh,
but DuPont stays ahead of Klenk, and Montañez is in the pits.
Ooh, what happened here? This is not, should not be a scheduled stop, I wouldn't think. He looks a little slow on his way in. I'm checking to see if he hit something.
Oh, he's retiring from the race, Joe.
Yeah, I don't see him hit anything on that lap, so I'm not sure what exactly happened to him.
Hopefully his car didn't hypnotize himself to sleep. Yeah, let's get back to this battle for 5th we have going on.
Yep.
And as I say that, a trained Luke has gotten by Masiera.
Glad to see that Luke is able to gain the position. Sad to see that Masiera has not been able to stop the bleeding, as he has now been demoted to 15th. But yeah, Gabriel, with a snap of his fingers, has gifted a position to everybody who is behind him. Had to get one more in, I'm sorry. Up at the front, DuPont and Klenk are still close together. This is for a top 5 spot. Klenk obviously has a few things to iron out before he can really claim to be one of the fastest. He may have been good in practice, he may have looked good in qualifying, but his racecraft needs a little work. Let's see what he can do in side-by-side action as he pulls up to the left side of DuPont. Defensive move there from the Canadian driver, and successfully fends him off one more time.
Defensive move, but fair move. He did one defensive block before they got to the braking zone. He actually does the same there as they went into the chute, moved it across to the right. So Klenk has realized that this driver, unlike Barry, is not going to yield the position without a fight.
Let's go to 2nd place. Sorry to interrupt, because Eisler somehow has caught Pinto, tried to make a dive into the heel of the boot, but he's able to hold Eisler off. Pinto under threat. I don't know if something happened, if he had a mistake or what, but suddenly Christian, he's got a whiff of 2nd place.
Yeah, must have been some kind of mistake from Pinto, because he has lost about a second off of a leader this lap.
He was way off the apex there in the final corner. You can see the run that has given the Iceman down into the first corner. Is he going to stick his nose in? Yes, he is. He is much later on the brakes. Pinto lets him through. Is he setting him up for the exit, though?
Or has he gone into fuel conservation mode?
Good question. 15 minutes left. He's starting to gain on him. Let's see if he has a go into the inner loop. Little bit of a defensive move from Eisler. Comes back to the racing line. Not close enough for Pinto this time. Worth noting, first 2 rounds, 2nd place. Twice in a row for Pinto.
Oh. Yeah, DuPont side by side with Klenk. They almost clanked together going down the back straight, but kept off each other.
And with that, Klenk just can't find a chink in the armor of DuPont. He's tried multiple times now, but nothing so far has been working. Stays right with him. Down into the toe of the boot. I was thinking...
Oh.
Go ahead.
James LeBlanc has wrecked on pit entry. Now he got it going again. Doesn't look like he has much damage.
So let's take a look at the replay here. Did it look like he was going for pit entry? Let's see. because this is, again, not a typical time for a pit stop. Yeah, he was headed straight for it and just under braking had the embarrassing moment of finding those yellow barrels.
I think fuel could play a role here, Drew.
You might be right. Well, some drivers don't look like they're really too concerned about it. We've watched Clank get very aggressive multiple times on DuPont, and I think we're going to get another one of those. Wow, if we could go to Clank now, he is right underneath the rear wing, lifts actually, to make sure that he doesn't bump into him as they work through the S's.
And we'll watch this as they continue up a hill. I'll give you an update that Masira has taken it to the pits. Whoa, very defensive by DuPont. Clank having none of it. He says, no, I'm taking this way, but DuPont still able to beat him into the turn.
With 2 wheels into the grass, and he sticks his nose in the carousel. He finally gets by, gets him a little bit shaken, puts him offline, and after try, oh, and here comes DuPont back at him down into the chute. Half-hearted move. He's given space at the apex. Alexander has no interest in handing it back, though.
Yeah, well, oh, it locks up, does DuPont, going into the braking zone there. Now, this is where Watkins Glen can get frustrating for some of the faster road course racers. Clank knows he's faster than DuPont. He was able to run him down a second a lap a while ago. But if he can't break the draft between them, that counts for nothing. So right now, that's why we see DuPont really driving the wheels off and almost sliding off right there. He's just trying to keep within slipstreaming range of Clank. But I have a feeling, honestly, with that moment he just had, he may have just lost any hopes of doing that.
I was going to say that was a little bit of overdriving, I think, for DuPont. He may have wanted to stay with him, but there's a certain point where you push it a little bit too hard. We'll get a good idea now as they come back to where it all erupted last time, which is the backstretch. Oh, it sounds like
but before they get there, the battle for third will get there. Pinto being defensive on Madro, and he's going to lose that spot. This is getting me concerned a little bit, Joe, that Pinto has gave those 2 spots up. Whoa, Tyler Gore just completely stopped off a racing line right there.
Oh, and there were multiple cars involved in that. He had an initial incident.
It is our leader! He was involved with Benjamin Perez. Perez pulls into grass, toast to the pit. He will not win this race.
Let's see if we can get the replay. Probably about 60 seconds ago. Might have to go a little farther than that even. We're seeing if we can pull it up. Wow, what a development. I said before, you cannot count it until the checkered flag flies. Now this is Perez that we're watching. He's going to come upon Gore, who basically hit the tires coming out of the inner loop. You see Gore up ahead, just can't avoid him. That was a hard hit. I can see why he pulled it into the pits.
Yeah, Perez tried to keep going for one more turn. That's why we didn't pick up our leader being involved in it initially, because we just saw Gore sitting there. Perez was trying to drive back around, but he only got a couple of turns and then realized, no, this thing's not going anywhere. So our new leader is Eisler. Second place is Maljau, and Pinto has dropped back to third. But the way that Pinto has yielded those positions, Joe, I'm almost wondering if he's playing the fuel mileage game at this point.
It certainly seems like it, but what is really wild here is not only does it change the lead, but it makes the lead very much up for grabs. As you pointed out how close these 3 are together. Maljau, he's got to be hungry for a win. I'm trying to think if we've actually seen him win any of these races since our coverage started here of the American iRacing Tuesday Series. Last season was the first time we jumped in. Maljau has always been there or thereabouts, but just couldn't seem to bring it home first. Now looks to be one of his best opportunities.
And you see in the top left corner of your screen right there, the time is running out, down to just 7 minutes left in this race.
Not sure if we're going to get much coverage with the other cars in the field after this unless this splits apart, because this is going to get hot and heavy as soon as we get to the final few laps and everything is up for grabs. Still just staying line astern, roughly equidistant at half a second apart from each other. And Ben Perez, we can report, is still in the pits. That damage must have been bad enough that he might not be able to make it out before the checkered flag falls.
Yeah, and those two lap cars you see ahead of the leaders of Gary Schilling and Mark File, those two are battling for 17th position, so they might be a bit tricky to get by.
Oh, Maujo's got to run on Eisler. I don't think he's going to be close enough. He takes a peek down into the inner loop, just trying to get in the mirrors.
File is off. Talking about the lap traffic, Mark File just had an off. Fortunately, they weren't closer to him.
Still, that brings them very close. And this is right when he is up behind. Our leader is Maujo, but can't get a pick out of that red Porsche. Oh, but look at the avoidance that poor Pinto had to make. That probably hurt his momentum.
Yes, Eisler is still leading the race. Maujo in second place. Pinto in third. Hasn't lost too much time.
Maujo now weaving down the straights a little bit. Poke his nose out, trying to get in the head of the Iceman. Christian won round one. He had a horrible race in round two. Through a little bit of fate intervening, he's looking at making it 2 wins out of 3 if he can just hold on to it for 5 more minutes. Gary Schilling, the next car up that we see, that white Ferrari that Eisler has to lap. Let's see if he maybe pulls off to the runoff here, coming through the 90. Oh, he does not. He's going to hold position. Ooh, this is going to get interesting here, Sam.
Yeah, this indeed. Schilling needs to just go as fast as he can. That's the best thing he can do for the leaders until now. Yeah, hopefully he'll back it down a bit on the exit here, let all 3 of them go by. Maujo has a nice run on Eisler. Either way, he's going to look down the inside.
Oh, but Pinto gets caught out as well as the top 2 try to battle it into the inner loop, but they come out the same way they came in. And now with a gap on Pinto, he actually gets into the side of Gary Schilling, and Schilling's into the wall.
Pinto keeps skidding through the turn. He doesn't get hit yet. He gets back on track, still in third place.
Gonna look at the replay. I don't blame Pinto for having to be aggressive through here. He's trying to stay with the leaders. If anything, I'm with you. I feel like Schilling should have given a big lift down the backstretch.
Yeah, watch how scary this gets for Pinto, though, when he spins back across the track. Fire almost gets into him. Pinto does a nice job to not only keep off the wall, both sides, but to avoid File. When he does get back going again, though, I lied, he does lose the position. Alexander Klenk just got by him for third.
Wow, Klenk has got to be wondering how he's managed that after his horrible pit stop. But fate seems to be smiling upon Klenk as he's climbed his way back up onto the podium, if he can hold off Pinto. That leaves it a 2-car battle for the lead now, with 3 minutes left between Christian Garreton Eisler and Sergio P's Maujo.
I have a feeling we're going to get the last lap of white flag signal the next time by. It's going to be tight, though. Eisler holding on to the lead. How much longer?
Sergio looks to the outside. Eisler tries to come back as close as he can to give himself the widest entry into the inner loop, and it works as he holds off Sergio for one more time. We're running laps at about 140. Yeah, it's going to be awful tight here at the end on whether they get the white flag or not.
Yeah, Vargas has to pit from 9th place. And Venezuela is in.
Whoa, big lock up there from our leader down into the toe of the boot. He does manage to find the apex. Christian might be starting to feel a little bit of the pressure here.
Yeah, Valenzuela is in rather. Rodriguez also into the pits. I almost wonder if we will see some of the leaders come into the pits at the end of this lap, knowing they can't make it one more.
Well, it'll be telling for sure, as we will, in fact, get the white flag. And you can see the clock ticking down. I believe they're far enough away. It'll be well under the 1 minute 40 lap times we've been seeing. Indeed, it's now passed under it. So Eisler comes around, gets the white flag. So can he hold off Sergio for one last lap to take his second win of the season? I know, I think this will... Go ahead.
Yes, Sergio completely overcooked turn one, I think, but he's able to capitalize on it, actually. He overshot it, but as a result, he's able to get a nice run on Eisler down the back straight.
Very nice run. Eisler all the way to the inside, trying to cover him off. Sees him going back. No attempts there from Sergio this time. He's got to get a little bit desperate. He's got to get aggressive. Pokes his nose in, makes contact, turns him around. Is he going to let him through? He lifts. He lets Eisler continue. Is this letting Klink get close enough? No, he's still too far behind.
Yep, they're able to retain positions 1 and 2. Now, how much damage do they have?
Eisler still in front. Sergio following behind. Is he going to make another attempt? Right now, nothing yet. Into the toe of the boot. Clock coming down to 0 here in just moments.
Nice driving by both of them to gather it up, keep it off the walls, keep going. And even if Sergio wanted to make another pass attempt, Joe, I have a feeling he's run out of opportunities.
Back onto the main circuit. Christian Eisler looked like he might have lost it. Some sportsmanship gave the lead back to Christian. And with the final corner here, Christian Eisler rounds it up to the line. Eisler takes the win here in round 3 of the American iRacing Tuesday series.
Glen will get 3rd place, Pinto will get 4th place, DuPont rounds out top 5. Fuel was a concern for a few more drivers who came into the pits at the end of the penultimate lap. However, many of our top contenders continue. Barry rounding out 6th place.
Well, you want to talk about that incident at the start, Sam, putting a big gap in the field from Thacker in 8th to Eric Luke in 9th is about 41 seconds. It's a bit of disparity.
Yeah, I have a feeling that middle of the field would have been a bit more densely populated a couple of laps ago. We did see some drivers come in and drivers able to capitalize on it. It looks like Pete Mobreton will finish 9th here, and also let's give a shout out, in fact, to Eric Luke. He just mentioned him because Eric Luke is going to come home with a decent finish after starting in 25th position.
All the way up to 9th. That is quite a run. And the last of our cars come to the line, including Cristobal Valenzuela. Tried to get one more spot, couldn't make it. So let's go to break here on the Global Sim Racing Channel. We'll come back with the unofficial results as well as driver interviews. And stick around because on screen you're going to see all the upcoming races here on GSRC. Welcome back to Watkins Glen International. We just watched round 3 here of the American iRacing Tuesday series. This race brought to you by 3D Concepts and Design, bringing your ideas to life. And bringing his second win of the season to life is Christian Eisler, who took our win today. Sergio Maujo tried to challenge him the whole way, but a failed attempt to pass meant that he felt better handing back the lead so that he didn't take it under dubious circumstances. Maujo in second. Clank rounds out our podium. I don't think anybody thought that after the pit stop was over for Alex. Daniel Pinto, first time of the season, he does not finish in second place, but still gets a fourth. We'll have to wait and see what the points wind up being, because I'm not sure if Pinto or Eisler will be at the lead of the points after that. Guillaume Dupont takes fifth, with Cameron Barry finishing in sixth. Juan Manuel Landini, almost kind of anonymous most of this race. Didn't see a whole lot of him, but he gets a nice seventh place finish. Aaron Thacker as well, going from 11th to 8th. Mover of the race, I think, pretty solidly here. Eric Luke going from 25th to 9th. And then rounding out our top 10 is Lucio Vargas. Sam?
Yeah, I incorrectly called him across the line in the top 10. Unfortunately, Pete Mobreton faded to 11th at the end there, ahead of Michael Overbay. Fernando Rodriguez back in 13th, ahead of Cristobal Valenzuela. A couple of those drivers towards the tail end of the lead lap there did have to come in and top off the fuel at the end. Mark File back there in 15th and James LeBlanc in 16th. Those two were one lap down, as well as Gary Schilling, who got involved a little bit more than I think he would have liked with the leaders towards the end there, rounding out 17th. Hugo Gales was behind him, ahead of a Ford GT of Danny Duchenne and Sean Kennan, rounding out the top 20.
Karsten Quint finishes in 21st. He's followed by Justin Hall in 22nd and Evan Paus, the teammate to Pinto, in 23rd. That's going to hurt them in the championship, the team's championship. Ben Perez, shocker today. Not quite his fault, I don't think, finishing down in 24th as he unfortunately ran into a bit of lap traffic that had an issue in front of him. It was hard to avoid. Tyler Gore takes 25th, with Sebastian Maciera taking 26th. Andrew Fawcett finishes in 27th, with Gabriel Montañez DNFing in 28th. And all these cars back behind him, I believe, are also DNFs. Matthew Frawley, 29th. Moises Lobato, 30th. Thomas Ellison, 31st. Sean Carini, 32nd. And did not starts for Federico Montini and Donald Arseth. With that, we have some of our podium finishers waiting to talk to us. First up, it's going to be our winner, Christian Eisler, who took win number 2 for this season after what was probably a bit of a disappointing race at Spa. How are you feeling here today with the win?
I feel great with the win. So, a bit lucky again because Benjamin, but I really happy. I made a good race, I think, today.
I'd say you had some really good pace, especially at the end there. Now, I don't know if you've had a chance to go back and look at the replay of that last lap. What are your thoughts on what happened with Sergio? And I assume you're very grateful he handed the lead back to you.
Yeah, after the bus stop, I made the parabolic curve, a little open, and I think he saw you a gap to attack me, but I think he was a little bit optimistic in that move. But Sergio is a very clean driver, so I no problem.
Well, glad to hear that you guys are still chummy after that. Now, we were curious because we saw almost everybody pit at exactly halfway. Was fuel tight for you guys, or was it easy the whole way?
The management of the fuel?
Yes.
In 1 hour race and 50% limit. Not many options for us. I think I could maintain a good pace because I changed my rear tires, and I don't know if others do the same thing.
Well, whatever the case, it definitely gave you a win here today. Congratulations, and hope to see you next week.
Thank you. See you next week.
That's the Iceman, Christian Eisler, our winner here today. And up next, I believe we have our third place finisher, Sam, going to talk to Alexander Klenk.
Yeah.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Alexander. First off, I've got to ask you, you were in the pits an awful long time. What was going on there?
Yeah, so what happened there was I ran out of fuel coming down the pit lane, and I was coasting, made it to my box, but overshot it by 2 or 3 feet, had no fuel to back up with, and had to tow, which cost me around 10 seconds or so.
Ah, that's a very interesting way. We thought it would have been a speeding penalty or something. I gotta be honest though, not the first time I've heard a story like that. Quite impressive then that you were able to come back from that to get a podium finish.
Yeah, thank you. It was a great race, really tight before the pit stop, opened up with some incidents, my fueling problem afterwards. Had to pass 2 guys to get to 5th, and then got to 3rd through some incidents up ahead. So pretty lucky, but I think my pace was still quite good.
Yeah, one of the battles you had towards the end of the race there, I believe it was with DuPont. Boy, you guys were getting quite close together, but finally he made a little bit of a mistake and you were able to capitalize.
Yeah, he was really hugging the inside there, and I think my car had a bit more downforce than some of the others, so it was tricky for me to get the slingshot to work very well. So I really had to take advantage of that mistake they made.
Well, you were able to do that. And, hey, Alexander, since you're one of the... I believe you're one of the newer drivers in this league, or at least I'm not familiar with your name. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, since it seems we're going to be seeing a lot more of you running up front throughout the rest of the season?
Yeah, so yeah, this is my first race. I was on the waiting list for the first 2 of the season. I'm part of Team Huge Ass. My teammate is Tom Ellison. I've been iRacing for around 3 years now. Really enjoying the Porsche RSR, like everyone else seems to be, because there's sure a lot of them on track. Live in Virginia, going to college. That's sort of what I'm doing in real life.
Which college?
Well, I actually go to college in Massachusetts, Worcester Polytechnic Institute. I'm studying aerospace engineering.
Okay. I'm a JMU graduate, so I wanted to see if we had a common connection there. All right. Well, thanks for coming to talk to us, Alexander. We look forward to seeing more of you throughout the rest of the season.
Thank you for having me.
That was Alexander Klenk, third place finisher. Just behind him, off the podium for the first time this season, is Daniel Pinto. We pulled him into the booth. Daniel, it seems like second place was only good enough for 2 times in a row. And you're finally off the podium. But still, it seems like fourth place will keep you in there in the hunt.
Well, I'm salty again. It's just, well, I miscalculated a bit of the fuel because I didn't account for that huge crash on first lap. I was counting with 35 laps, not 36 laps. And when I got out of pits, I realized that, well, there's no lapped cars in front, so I need to save more fuel. So I tried to save as much as I could. Then I let Christian pass. Then I realized I had to let Sergio pass too, so I could save fuel behind them and maybe attack on the last laps. Then Ben crashed, and then I thought Gary would let me pass like he did Christian and Sergio, but apparently he didn't see me or something like that, because, well, he just went in front of me on the bus stop. Then I thought he would open on the Parabolica, but I don't think he saw me. So we made contact and I lost third place. Well, it happens.
Yeah, we kind of suspected that it looked like you might be saving fuel. When that incident with the back marker happened, were you in go mode, trying really hard to stay with those drivers ahead? And is that why you kind of figured you had to make the pass then?
No, I still wasn't on full go mode. I still had to save a little bit more fuel. That I made afterwards behind Alexander. I just needed to save fuel for 2-3 more corners before I could go full on. I would probably have the speed to challenge Sergio and Christian for the lead on the last 3 laps, but well, that happened, so I wasn't able to. But well, next week I will give it my best again.
Well, one last question before we let you go. We noticed that you mentioned you expected to have a bad qualifying last week, but this week you put it in third. Do you think you've got the qualifying figured out now in this car?
No, I have to tell you, it was a really bad lap. I don't think anyone could get a clean lap in. The track was already a bit dirty. Just let you know, I had my optimal at I think it was 39.8, and I did a 40.6, right? Something like that. So my optimal was 7/10 faster than my best lap. So it wasn't a good lap. I just think that no one could get a good lap in.
Yeah, well, it definitely would have put you on pole if you had gotten that fast. Well,
Yeah.
again, commiserations, and I have to think that eventually that win will come. You certainly have pace, and we look forward to seeing you at Mosport.
I just need to learn how to drive better. The rest will come.
That was Daniel Pinto finishing fourth today, and boy, Lord help us if he learns how to drive better, because if that's bad for him, I can imagine how amazing it'd be for him driving good. So with that, we're going to close up today. It is, again, 3D Concepts and Design that sponsored this race. They help bring your ideas to life. And if you'd like to sponsor one of these races, we have the website for the Precision Racing League in our YouTube description. Go check that out if you are interested in sponsoring and getting your company's name up in lights here on the Global Sim Racing Channel. Thanks to the Precision Racing League for putting this event on once again, and thanks to the companies that provide the software and hardware for our broadcast listed here on your screen. Additional thanks go to Eric Ekholm and June Lalonde, who provide our wonderful music. See the screen for how to get a hold of more of their great work. Thanks to the team today, Sam, Sean, and Dougie. If you'd like to find out more about GSRC, including upcoming races, you can find it at globalsimracingchannel.com. You can also check out our social media on Twitter at GSR Channel, Facebook at Global Sim Racing Channel, and Instagram at GSRC_Graham. The next race, as we mentioned, that is at Mosport, Tuesday, July 10th at 9 p.m. Eastern. We also have upcoming races for other series listed on the screen, so check those out and mark them down on your calendar. However, until next time, race clean, race hard, and we'll see you on the track.